How's it going? Hypnosis, brainwashing, neurolinguistic programming, quantum physics. Let's go. So, brief little introduction to all of this and getting into the interconnected aspect of it. Mostly because main objective is for you to kind of pick up the controller in different ways with those various tools, understanding how they interconnect, and just feel fucking better. Literally. I mean, it's that you'll see. It's a very logical, it is simple, and it's not really step per step. It's quite open. So it's not very dictatory in the process. It's not one and done, and if you don't have it, you won't ever get it. No, it's a series of interconnected concepts. Yes, there's going to be some methods, and yes, I'll see if I can splash in certain techniques here and there, but let's just kind of give you a bit of a running start for you to enter what this is, how to perceive how you've kind of been doing it all your life without necessarily knowing it, and how it's been done onto you without you necessarily being aware of it. But also understanding how it works, you can just do it on your own and not let yourself be affected by exterior elements that would use it on you. Now, I know lots of words, and this is the type of stuff where feel free to pause, feel free to ask questions, feel free to just have some back and forth, look at various sources. I'll try to name as many as I can, but again, be open to look at multiple sources for you to find out what kind of connects with you, what terminologies connect with you even more, so that you can have this more intricate internal felt understanding, not just the logical stuff. We're not doing the school crap of, hey, you're gonna have to memorize all this and then repeat it like you know it by heart, but then you don't necessarily feel the experience, so that later on it doesn't really matter too much for you. This is a felt, understood experience, and when you get that connection going, when you're like, okay, yeah, I felt like this before and I can understand how this has made me feel, you're then able to pick up the controller and start playing with those feelings, with those different methods, with your subconscious, in the way that you would rather have. Okay, so neurolinguistic programming, let's just kind of go with the various definitions. Hypnosis, you guys know it, right? The little, ooh, you are feeling this, you are a chicken, you are this, you've seen hypnosis shows, all right? You've seen even, there's a very fantastic reality TV show that showed the power of, it's a mix of neurolinguistic programming, but also hypnosis. How a group of selected individuals were literally kind of, without them knowing, built up through a fake motivational seminar, but they were built up to make a bit of a heist. It's kind of like a Garda truck heist, a bank truck heist. But they didn't necessarily know, they didn't necessarily expect it would culminate to that. But you want to see that show as a big example of that. And a mix of that, because hypnosis can be done through an aspect of a repetition of certain triggers, but more to say, a repetition of a behavior associated to a specific trigger, whether it be a word, whether it be a specific type of music, whether it be a facial expression. First, you need to be in a receptive state. So receptive states would be tad bit tired, open but continuously staring, and a bit more like, again, you're not extremely active. You're kind of open and suggestible. So in stage shows for hypnosis, there needs to be consent from the person. They're never going to take a person that's going to be like, I just want to prove you wrong, because they'll actively put a perceptual blocker to stop any suggestion. Okay? And of course, it doesn't really work with the show. That's just kind of like bringing up a heckler on stage and it just cancels out the show. But this is an interesting ability to gather. It's just, it doesn't help the show. So they need consent. Plus, again, when you make an hypnosis show, you got to tell the police there are laws against hypnotizing a person or using hypnosis on a person without their consent. So already having consent, you allow yourself to get into a very kind of like a low brainwave frequency state, equal to how you feel 7 or 8 p.m. at night, which again, bit of a warning when you watch commercials or you watch the news or anything around that night. You are at a suggestible state, unless you're going to pick up coffee or you're going to get yourself into a much more energetic state. This is what's called a suggestible state, okay? And even prior to bed, same deal. As you're falling into sleep, there's a reason why sleep tape works. It all works under that same method or law of hypnosis, So that's what we can kind of go eye to eye on. Now, interestingly enough, meditation and mantras work under the same principle, meaning you got to be in an open state or much more suggestible state as you dive into meditation. You're not actively looking everywhere when you're in meditation. You're kind of going deep within and just lowering your your brain state waves. You're lowering your brain waves. You're just not as consciously active. And then what you then perceive or not perceive, because there are meditations to go completely blank and null, no thoughts. And then there's meditations for inner conversation, which I'd highly recommend if you are not too much of a fan of the other one. You have choice. But as you do those inner conversations, you'll notice some certain things in the subconscious. And again, you can re-imprint or de-imprint some of these things because you are in the suggestible states. How does that link up to brainwashing? Well, as I've said, if you've been following it up, it's equivalent to that if you are not aware of it. Meaning, in such states, you can be easily suggestible through a repetition that will then lead that knowledge to go into your subconscious willy-nilly, no objection and no arguments, unless you're going to be the heckler at that hypnosis show and just go, no, as you watch whatever you watch in that state. You can consciously do that, but there's not a lot of people doing it consciously because it's not been you could say, popular talk. It's not been they don't teach that in school yet. But it's not really taught in school how to shield your mind from that suggestibility. And ironically enough, and this kind of goes back into the where you've always been doing it or working with that principle, school, as you sit there repressing your natural energy of movements, as you're a kid, you have a buttload of energy, and of course active movements allow you to expand that. But if you are, I won't say forced, but in a sense this could open up a larger discussion at another point for the school topic, but as you're kind of pushed into that environment where you lower your energetic state, you literally have to force yourself to sit down and just blitz your attention on this thing that may or may not necessarily be part of your interest. Well, it is kind of close to that state because you're not necessarily all the time interested. Sometimes you're just like, I just want to do something, I'll try. It's similar to that state. So that's why, and I don't, the objective is not necessarily to hammer on the teacher. You don't know. You didn't know. Okay? It's not to put fault on the teachers and the establishment, but it's kind of just to get to this point of understanding that we have more knowledge on the human brain and how it works, and your institution is not necessarily prepared to help us maximize our potential or even to get us, it's not saying above average, it's just kind of like connecting with our being, who we are as a human being. So I kind of have to chalk it up to brainwashing. And there's more things that I can come up to bring up on that subject, which can hammer that point. Just the fact that you are taught in a very linear way of perceiving. It's ones or zero, good answer or bad answer, good people in history or bad people in history. Again, the ones and zero type of answer. Do the right equation to get the answer. If you use a different equation and then still get the right answer, I'll take some marks off. Again, you can kind of see it similar to brainwashing. You are anchored into this very linear way of seeing and perceiving, and you're not necessarily allowed to go through the multiple nuances. On top of the fact that most of the learning that you do is, you could say, pen and paper type of learning. It is not an experiential learning. You are not learning from experience. So that's why it's not saying it's not a right way of learning. It is just not a full and complete aspect of learning by experience, which then happens later on. Inevitably happens later on because you're just chalked out on the job market, and it's like, well, buddy, you've learned one thing that was right for like 5 years ago. Now you get to learn a whole different thing and follow. It's like learn on the spot. Go. So sorry, teachers. And I fully understand that the structure and the things behind that are kind of locking off various programs you want to integrate. That's also another bigger topic, because that is not just the teachers, but multiple industries are facing that aspect, that old guards are keeping one strict model of what needs to be taught or done, while the reality of it, when you understand reality is organic, everything changes, everything grows, and everything evolves. You cannot stick to that linear structure of things as well as that linear way of thinking. It no longer works. So it's a reality that some of the old guards kind of need to face, because more and more people are going towards alternative ways of studying and learning, which is online. Again, you got more power than the Pharaoh on this. Just look at the information, but also balance out your distraction and your methods of learning. So that's it on the brainwashing aspect of perimeter. It's, again, repetition of information while the state is suggestible. Now, how does that fit in with quantum physics? Well, buddy, this thing called the observer effect owns you. In a funny way, you kind of want to play with this, but you want to understand that the observer effect has been what's been running our life and reality for an amount of time. We are no longer talking about the Newtonian physics of things, the cause and effect type of deal, mainly sticking to the cause to get the effect. We're no longer working with that. Or as in only staple of reality. One thing that's being understood more and more and more, especially when you look at the ancient texts, when you go into spirituality, when you go into the law of attraction and now quantum physics, but even neuroscience is getting into it and understanding it and bringing you literal experiments with results and graphs, is the fact that if you keep observing, whether it is in thought or perception, it doesn't matter whether you think about it continuously and feel it, or you perceive it. You are looping that effect. You are looping that result. You are indirectly walking towards it because you have imprinted your subconscious mind with the idea, situation, feeling, perception. You've been repeating it. So naturally, both subconsciously, your brain's more and more aware of it. And a beautiful exercise by Tony Robbins, because that fits in back to neurolinguistic programming, is the aspect of, guys, look at your current room right now. When you're looking at your current room, I want you guys to look for everything that is brown. Okay, so right now, look for everything that's brown in your room. Everything that's brown. You just kind of look around, everything that's brown. Okay, cool. Close your eyes. Can you tell me everything that is green? Oh, bamboozled, right? Like I had you looking for brown over and over and over, and you were able to kind of picture everything that's brown. But now I ask you to close your eyes and tell me, okay, what's green? And because you haven't really been paying too much attention to what's green, due to me telling you, look for brown, you're going to have less elements that are green. Now, if you open your eyes and you start looking for everything that's kind of green, you're going to spot more things that are green. And you're going to be able to stack that list up. But can you understand that just by being told, look for this for a certain amount of time, like maybe 20 to 30 seconds, then closing your eyes, your focus was on everything that you were told to look at. Yet then being prompted and asked, look for something that's completely different. Now you're like, oh shit, yeah, I don't necessarily have that many elements. It is the same principle. Add to that the fact that more than simply just having that subconscious play of looking for one thing or versus another, and you literally being able to train yourself to look for one thing, well, you also have the aspect of encountering more and more of that in your world. Meaning, if you have fun, play with that concept as a little exercise, okay? Think about Lamborghinis. Have fun. Look at certain images online of Lamborghinis. And then throughout the week, look at how many Lamborghinis you might encounter throughout your street, you know? Or certain articles that might just pop up on your newsfeed, you know? It works with the same principle. Yet, if it wasn't for you priming that in advance, okay, then your brain wouldn't necessarily bat an eye about it and be like, oh, it's just another car, whatever. See, you can use those principles at your advantage, yet you can also have the exterior fuck with you on that, which we've seen with the news and broadcasting. Also, television shows. Unfortunately, something that does happen, and I always say, never blame the writers because good fiction sells. Yet, we're at a point where we understand that the repetition of certain patterns in fiction causes the subconscious to keep those patterns and then to expect those, or even worse, to perpetuate those. So, oftentimes on television, there's this good old pattern to watch out for the bad guy, watch out for things to kind of go wrong because you need a good twist. It's never going to last. Oh, it's not going to last. And then boo! And you're like, I knew it! And it's like, well, that really doesn't make a good world, right? Because if you keep that pattern in mind, you're never necessarily going to let yourself be happy. You're always going to have a bit of a nagging subconscious feeling that'll pop up because it'll just go literally like your TV shows. It's too good to last. It's not really going to last that long. When's the drop coming? When's the negative shit coming, right? And again, the repetition of those perceptions throughout the media, again, it sells. And I understand Mr. or Mrs. News Anchor or day news anchor. Like, I understand it sells. You are trained and indoctrinated to do what sells. I fully understand. Yet, here's the problem. There's what sells, and then there's what's going to help people and humanity in general. And we've kind of came at a point when what sells ain't fucking helping. You know, the little dose of dopamine that's acquired from these fiction and even the news up to a certain degree, and I've spoken about it, can also be considered as a fiction because you are not living it in the moment. Never ever get caught by the old history trap of falling into gossip and then reacting in the moment to something that you are not currently living. There's been family rivalry, decimation of countries that have happened in the olden days, medieval times, or even the Wild West, or Victorian era as well, of people just flaring up out of a gossip. Oh, this other person has said that. What? I challenged them to a duel. Ego. Yet that has been a bit of an issue recently as well. You know, something is tweeted No context, no understanding of nuance goes through a 150 character text compared to a direct conversation or video. Yet, automatically, and even when it comes to video, at times it's really tricky to try to explain the entirety of a context, and certain people don't necessarily like those hour videos, right? Time, speed up, go, 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 fast, 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 right? Can you see how it doesn't necessarily help up? The being sped up, go, 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 fast, fast, fast. You're used to that speed. Your applications, they respond on the fly. Yeah, that also brings a habit of not necessarily paying attention to context, or not necessarily even enjoying the nuances and details of the actions that you do. There's a big key to that, because that's a major ass key for you to becoming a genius in whatever field or things that you do. Legit, if you take the time to pay attention and enjoy the nuances of your activity up to the littlest and most granular detail, but doing it playfully and fun, so it's not an obsession. See, there's a balance to it. You enjoy the granularity of it, but you don't obsess over it. You love the details and nuance and the expansion that it brings every time, yet you do not need it all the time. You do not make it necessary. Can you see the multiple levels of back and forth? Okay? Versus the mediatic and the fiction aspect of it, where it's only got to be that or else you're a shit. Ones or zeros. Simplistic, right? Enough repetition of that simplistic way of thinking, you won't even bat an eye about it. And this is what often brings anxiety and depression. It is having a very simplistic rule set on how you should be and how you should behave based on an exterior, a societal perspective and point of view, which is often very linear and basic, and does not understand or does not take into account your own unique context of life. Meaning everything that you've experienced, which then brings what you prefer and what you don't prefer. All that's kind of batted away in the aspect of, okay, well, if you're a supporter of this, then you're not that. If you support this, then you are an enemy or you are that. Very simplistic. Activists, and you've seen extreme left, just like the extreme right. They roll with that kind of momentum, which brings a bit of an imbalance. That's why, up to a certain degree, there's a bit of a stigma against activists or activism. Is because oftentimes they stay in a very linear way of thinking. I think I've spoken about an encounter with one that's like, do you eat meat? And it's like, yeah, here, time to time. Oh, okay, so you're killing the animal. And it's like, whoa, there's two different actions, feelings and results there. Actively killing an animal is literally taking the knife, and it's like, yeah, but you're doing it. No, you're not. No, you're not. Oftentimes, and if you notice your subconscious leading you into these very linear aspects of way, you literally want to stop it. You want to spot it, you want to stop it, and then you want to understand the multiple layers of what's being discussed in your own mind. Which is where, after understanding those principles, okay, neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, brainwashing, and the observer effect, after you understand those very surface level principles, then you can start just taking the controller and doing two main tasks, okay? There's the aspect of cleaning up whatever subconscious blockers you have in your mind, okay? Whatever subconscious belief that you, again, were not born with and did not consciously choose, okay? So consciously choose is, am I going to enjoy or am I going to reap benefits from that decision 10 days after, 10 years after, okay? It's being able to perceive the long run. We weren't necessarily fully trained in that, and we didn't necessarily have the best examples in there. And again, it's not to shame, it's just to acknowledge that we have more and more understanding and knowledge of this. So again, give that universal compassion to your parents, because the same way that they didn't know what they didn't know, you didn't know what you didn't know, and cause certain actions. So get that universal compassion and understanding. It'll make your life a living heaven because it's simple, it's logical. Do not fall for the brainwashing narrative of fault finding and pinpointing blame. You will even find an aspect of compassion to the 0.01%, again, looking to control and fuck around with people. You'll even find an aspect of compassion there because you can put yourself in that life and understand that your initial dice roll placed you in a family that would just control your thoughts, control your idea of who you are, and then you just repeat that until you believe it. And then, okay, that's your pathway. I need to control and dominate other people. Complete disconnection from your heart reaction. So understand that. That's one of your main understanding tool and one of your main golden bullets to go through that process of clearing up your old beliefs, because you won't get stuck in an aspect of blaming, which then doesn't feel well, and then to perpetuate that value, that idea in your mind. You kind of snag into the aspect of blaming, but you're not healing that old value. You're also not helping the other person that spread that value heal by doing so. You just kind of get back into the runaway game, the political game, the social game of blaming and then not doing shit. So you're well on your way to becoming a politician if you take that path, because it's just poo-slinging on the opponent and nothing really gets worked on that aspect. Play with this, okay? So the inner clearing is one part of it. The other part of it is just creation and creating what you would prefer to experience in life. That becomes fucking cool because, again, as I keep saying, you think at the speed of light. No joke. Think about a pink elephant. Just perceive it right now. Pink elephant. Okay, cool. How fast was that? An apple. Think about an apple. How would it feel? Crunch into it in that fictional apple, or a better exercise with that. And sorry for those who are really sensitive, but it's just to kind of hammer the point across. Think about a lemon, all right? Just fully think and feel about a lemon. If those of you who can't visualize, smell it, sense it, feel it in your hand, smell it, okay? If you can't see it, smell it, okay? Then let's push it another step further, still while having your eyes closed. Take a bite into it. Yeah, can you feel your mouth watering a bit because it's sour? Like, How'd you fucking do that, right? There was no physical lemon, but you were able to sense it. You were able to smell it. You were able to feel it, and you were also able to taste it. Take that time. Pause the video. Really give it a good shot, all right? That's a key. You've done it light speed. You were also able to get sensations into it. Now, with that speed, every time you train and practice that speed, you go faster and faster. It's like a Dragon Ball Saiyan. You just get better and better and better. Naturally, because it's the law of repetition. You will get better at something that you repeat. That can also be both positive and negative depending on how you focus on that. So if you let your attention, your imagination go into random fictions of negativity, if you ingest that quite often, well, you're pretty good at popping up negativity, right? Think about all the shitty shit you've seen in your TV shows, right? All the downfalls of your characters getting snuffed out and all that. You know some of those recent shows. You're pretty much an expert at it if you've been repeated this. Don't worry. The law of repetition also works on the opposite. So you can be an expert at having a great and terrific day, because with this ability to think at light speed, you will have much more of an ease to monitor your internal thoughts. And then you will have much more ease to create a different loop, a different pattern. Consciously. You're the one who's going to be able to take it consciously. You're not going to get your cartoons, your shows to implement shit patterns in your mind anymore. You're going to be able to spot it, to spot it for the entertaining fiction that it is, but also for the repetition that you don't necessarily want. So what are you going to do at this point? You pick up the controller and you go, okay, I'm going to leave time in my day to consciously do that new, loved, preferred repetition. That's why creating stuff for your life. What do you want to do? What do you want to create? And now, as some may have noticed, naturally, this is going to bring you back to your inner clearing. Because if you notice, I want to create this trip, but I don't think I can do it. I don't think I have that. Oh, clear that shit. What brought you that thought? What time did you pick up that idea? Oh, when did you pick up that social idea? What age? Clear it up. You weren't born with it. You could have been born at any other place, and you would have had a whole different brainwashing in that aspect, or a whole different indoctrination. So just take it out. Next, back to creation. Okay, so yeah, I can do that trip. Oh yeah, it would be great to wear all of this, and then get into, let's say, that kind of relationship with a certain group. Oh, but I don't feel I can fit that group. Oh, where'd you pick that from? When was it? Can you see the back and forth? And you easily always have the control over it, because you're going to spot some old subconscious thinking, and then you're going to clear it up. And yes, it takes time and time to go through that subconscious clearing, because guess what? It also works under the law of repetition and the observer effect. So here's the, how can you say, not necessarily double-edged, but you can kind of see how a negative spiral can be created. Because if by an event in your life you've been placed a subconscious trigger that would lead, or a subconscious belief, a negative belief, okay, just out of first impression, and it's normal, because from 0 to 9 we are sponge. We just take knowledge, we interpret event, and we don't necessarily bat too much of an eye at it, because we were not taught to do so. So it is normal. Yet when you get into a negative subconscious spiral, and you just kind of go, okay, well, this is that because of that early impression. This is how life works because of that early impression. Well, then the observer effect is like, oh, you're observing that? Okay, cool. Let's make it so. Again, Santa Claus, the boogeyman. Those are very, very surface level examples of that. But you must understand that your perception of reality was influenced by that. It was changed and modified by that. Okay? It's not to throw away, and I say you must. It's just not to throw it away as some simple thing that happened because kids are stupid. No. Kids are not stupid. Get that programming out of your mouth, out of your head. Okay? Ever expanding infinite beings, meaning it's just an early period of understanding, of information gathering. It is not stupid. Okay? There is no such thing as stupidity. It is simply continuous growth of awareness. And if you're going to label someone else like that because they don't necessarily have the same years of experience that you do, then you're being dumb, because that's expecting them at that early age to have that same years. It doesn't make logical sense. That is what I kind of find true stupidity. But again, it's just a lack of awareness. So again, it's not stupidity. It's just lack of awareness, of conscious awareness. And yes, there's factors like social conditioning and brainwashing that way. So don't worry about it. But never, ever, 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 ever dismiss that early period as being stupid. Because again, that's just perpetuating a shit momentum your way, and you'll be less likely to clear whatever's happened there, because you'll be judging yourself, and you never should. Never judge yourself or another person. That is the fiction brainwashing activating, because you need a good villain, thus you need to judge them as a villain. And again, there's framing, there's perceptual framing to it. So again, don't fall into that. Understanding for what it is. Fiction. Okay? And this is not to say that all writers have to change and blah, 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 blah. No, This is just an unfortunate side effect of our overabundance of fiction. Okay? Back prior, you'd have to go to a library, or you would have to get your your cassette tapes, at the Blockbuster. But now we just have access at a click of a button, which has advantages but also disadvantages. This is why you can't necessarily stick to a linear way of thinking. You have to understand both the advantages and disadvantages, and then you consciously making choices from that expanded state of understanding. And frankly, it is not that difficult. If you feel that this waterfall of word is tricky and difficult to understand, don't worry. Again, this is just a result of the linear way we've been programmed to perceive and talk because of that fiction. And we're kind of understanding more and more that, yeah, this is not the entirety of everything that is, or us. And even in the aspect of rethinking and reconsidering the idea of competition, and that it never really worked in what we were being shown. It's just understanding that now your unique individual person and life story will obviously have a context that not everyone is going to be able to see, or no one is going to be able to see to the degree that you do. So if you don't necessarily pay attention to your life, then you're not able to understand the granular aspect of everything that led you up to this moment. And at that point, well, no one else is going to do it for you, because we're not going to live it through your eyes and feel it the way that you feel it. Another example, and this one I keep repeating, I will never know what your favorite ice cream is, when it became that way, every subsequent ice cream that you use to find different kind of flavors and combinations leading up to your topmost favorite. I'll never know it. I'll never even know where you bought it. I'll never know what led to that. Okay? To that granularity of experience, okay? Put that on everything else that you live in your life. I'll never know what's your favorite movie, what led to that. I'll never know what's your favorite bike, No one will know the granularity of that information aside from you, to the degree that you pay attention to it. So that's why when it comes to the idea of triggers, I'm being triggered by this, I'm being triggered by that, it is foolish to run your life with trigger warnings or expecting the exterior to know your triggers. It is foolish to keep running your life with these. Okay? No one will know. Even if you express it to a certain group, we're 8 billions on this planet. So you're going to keep having the reactions to various triggers if you do not do the inner work. Okay? Because then you're going to start planning for stuff in your life, head towards it, and then boom, a trigger kind of comes up. A word, some kind of a meaning, or an action. You're going to get reactionary and you will want the exterior to change. But you can't. You just can't force change. That's not understanding their context, or the context of whatever led to that event or to that word or to that situation. That's, again, indirectly not necessarily understanding the loop of it. So when it comes to that, if you have triggers, do the inner work. Understand that you weren't born with triggers. You were just told to have that as a trigger. Again, you weren't born with words, definitions, and meaning. Ain't no evil baby, ain't no triggered baby. All right? And even if you're going to try to fit in their crying reaction as a trigger, no, it ain't. It's simply not knowing what's happening in the body currently and having only this expression to bring out. Because then a baby would need to be able to understand logically what is happening, and then have the words to express it. And that's not logical. So clear your triggers. You cannot stay in a state of perpetually needing the exterior to abide to your trigger, because that's like asking everyone else to be a mind reader, which is not at a state. We're not at this state yet. Not yet. Yet. But we're not at this state, and that will just give you a miserable life, because out of a state of 8 billion, there's always going to be another that will bring it back up. So at this point, why waste your time with that, right? So, and also that is a bit of programming too. Hey, if I program you to need the exterior to change to be well with yourself, then I have efficiently and machiavellically programmed you to have a miserable life. To constantly be in pain and hate the exterior for it, for your own perception that I have placed within you. Fucked up, right? If I train you and then repeat that training for you to, one, have the concept of trigger, and two, need the exterior environment to do XYZ for you to feel great, I have literally programmed you to have a miserable life and kind of speed up the midlife crisis, which happens. And the same kind of goes for defending yourself for pronouns. You are looking for an exterior factor for you to feel well. So if a person doesn't necessarily use the right pronoun and you react because it's a trigger, and you keep repeating this because you feel this is right, your life will be hard, difficult, and at one point it's like, am I the only? Everyone else is crazy, and you put yourself in echo chambers that repeat that same momentum. It's just like NLP. It's just like hypnosis. You will repeat those rule sets. You will repeat those perceptions of life, which literally make you feel anxious, angry, bad. And again, you can't keep blaming the exterior. You will have other people in those groups that will justify that. And of course, are you living happily? Do you even understand that every time that you find something wrong in someone else, it is your own perception? Do you also understand that when you feel that negativity, you're affecting your own cells? Your own cells. You're getting more prone to illness. Do you also understand that that negative emotion gets lodged into your body and will cause illness, right? So with that understood and possibly felt, do you still want to leave your well-being in other people's hands? No. You have the entire control of it. It's just you were taught that you didn't. And also you were lulled to look at the exterior constantly. There's stimulus. More parrot into Pharaoh, but it's a big double-edged sword if you don't necessarily understand the chemical addiction to dopamine transmission, or just to this quick response from this device. Everything from a like to a quick response to a shiny little effect from a game, a mobile game. All of it triggers that dopamine. Problem is, too much of it leads the body subconsciously to kind of go, okay, if I need a quick fix, this is there. So I don't necessarily need to make or to do something bigger to get that fix. I can just easily get that fix there. And that becomes a bit of a problematic thing later on. I had a person which I was working with as a game tester. Even though as a game tester you will get that bit of a loop of dopamine. Every time you find a bug or every time you do an objective in a game, it still works the same way. And some people have regulated it. But I was working with a tester that had that big ass problem with phone games, up to a point where even the dopamine acquired from testing wasn't enough. This person was actively taking breaks, piss breaks or shit breaks, extended piss break or extended shit breaks to play on the phone, because the chemical addiction to it was just so much. And some people would just judge that individual and just say, oh yeah, this person's just a lazy worker. And it's like, no, we didn't know the addiction that those devices and various systems within those devices, social media, the feed list, we didn't know the impact of that it would literally leave a chemical addiction to the body. We didn't fucking know. So don't blame the person. Yes, there is an aspect of being receptive to help or wanting to lead to help. But when you don't consciously understand those mechanics because you're stuck in the loop and you're just paying attention to the loop instead of your physical body reaction, okay? Then you just don't fucking know. You're not at blame. You're not at fucking blame. Now, again, there are trials and tribulations, meaning that person could easily lose their job after a while and then get into a negative spiral of figuring out, okay, what's going on? It's my fault and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, it's not your fault. Realize the chemical addiction and let's balance it out. And yeah, this person was really hard to help. I don't know this person's situation. I think, no, actually, wait, the cocoa helped. The big cocoa helped. There was a lot of things placed in consideration during the isolation. So I'm glad that this person is just heading into a different momentum in their life and no longer sticks to this over addiction of dopamine from those devices and mini mobile games. But guys, it is up to that point. If you do not pay attention to your bodies and thought, you can literally lead yourself down a cliff of negative emotion. In a sense, if you see depression and suicide, you know, the link between it, it's kind of literally that. You're running a set of thoughts, a illogical set of thoughts, you know, possibly a comparative set of thought, or you're just going with the, you could say, I don't want to call it a mode. I don't want to call it a fad. Maybe a fad could work because you can kind of see the whole self-deprecation, the whole let me blog about everything that kind of goes wrong, or let me add some Instagram story, little snippets of things that go wrong, okay? You can see it as a fad, but you can also see it as, with the law of repetition, you're going to get better at it. Getting better at it gets you more and more awareness of everything that could be perceived as bad. Again, it's your own perception. So your perception grows in things that you can perceive as bad. This literally affects your body, affects your mind. Again, look for brown, look for brown, look for brown. This is like look for everything that's black, look for black, look for black. The repetition makes you more of an expert at it. Up to one point, you just find out the decision that, well, maybe I should just end it because everything's kind of bad. Without necessarily, again, going into a less simplistic way of saying, look at it all as a Tetris block, okay? Beginning of the day. Oh, this is a rainy day. This is really bad. I hate this. This is a rainy day. The sun came up today. No mega solar flare fucking with the planet. So the sun came up. That's good. I was able to breathe this morning. Oh, right. I have air. If I didn't have that, I would die. Gravity worked. Oh, I'm not just floating up. Right? Or I'm not just hammered down if gravity just decided to go, well, fuck you. You know? So gravity still worked. I have access to more power than the Pharaoh with my device. Okay? And a lot of interconnection. I can communicate with a lot of people at this time. So if I need support, I can ask for it, you know? I can have access to so much more diversity of food and creation and fiction now. It's amazing. See what I mean? You can see that Tetris block is logically bigger than, oh, this day is bad, it's a rainy day. Or, oh, I don't like myself. Okay, well, a lot of people don't necessarily like themselves as well. But you can just kind of go, okay, well, I'm unique in my own being and I have my own preferences. Why not look into that? I really like this kind of music and I like having access to this kind of music. I have a very specific type of clothing. I like this kind of clothing. It makes me really feel good. And then you can go about all the details on that too. Again, go deeper. Whenever you get that, milk it, you know? I'm just doing this by comparison, but ultimately, I'm always living with myself. So there's no point of disliking myself based on someone else's perception, which ultimately tells me that they don't like themselves that much. really it all comes from one's own perception, whatever is being projected. So if you're going to use that as a standard base, get a standard base from someone that actually likes themselves. You see, the Tetris block will always crush that linear way of thinking. There's always multiple things you can kind of piggyback off and milk. You can always flip that initial Tetris block as well. You all have the tools. It's just, don't run with the fad of self-deprecation because, I need to fit in. Fuck that. Now that you understand where it will eventually lead you to, just don't speed yourself up on that. There's so many more things worth it in life. And I guess on a closing note, you have the inner inquiry, which will lead you through that work and lead you through having a much more healthy, positive, enthusiastic, and growth-inducing repetition. Okay? To then help you create, which will then have you grow inevitably. Whenever you create a new situation, a new awareness, a new, let's say, dream, then you grow. Because as you go to that vision, your perception and your awareness grows. Okay? If you didn't do it, then you wouldn't be able to perceive from that new standpoint. You kind of get the drift? So, understanding that, those two back and forth, can ultimately lead you to this aspect of just being. Meaning, you're no longer snagged into a negative repetition that sinks you down. You're no longer comparing off to others because you understand how illogical it is. And I guess let me bring some nuance to it. You're not comparing for competition. You're comparing for expansion. You just kind of go, I'm a bit inspired by this. So what do I feel about this? And then how can I integrate this in my own way? Because it's not about copying. Again, you'll never copy. Remember, granular context. You're not basic linear. Granular context. Alright? So you will never copy the other person. You'll never will, and no one will copy you. You are living different experiences. So you're comparing in an aspect of, what do I like about this? Or what do I balance about this? And then you go on. You're at this new standpoint. And if it wasn't for that moment of that different kind of comparing, you wouldn't be at that new standpoint. Can you see how you grow infinitely? Infinitely. Right? So those two things will just get you into this amazing state of being. And at that point, you won't feel the need to post negative, jaded, self-harming shit on social media, because you'll understand also the fact that text doesn't explain the entirety of you. As you can see, it is hard to contain or to fully express the granularity of perception. There's just so much. That's why TV, fiction, and media can't do it. There's just so much more, right? And as you understand this, you also just let go. You understand that text will never truly represent the context of what you were, or the granularity of what you're trying to bring out, as well as the context what you're trying to bring out comes from. Tweeting doesn't express that much. That's why a lot of people can take it out of context and not necessarily realize that. So just roll with that momentum. You can also understand how extreme right, extreme left have, again, used narrative repetition to get people in division. Whether you're one religion or to another, it is still the same kind of repetition until you're told you're the all. You're the universe, which then quantum physics tells you. And at that point, because of the religious indoctrination, you'll just ferociously deny it because you're told you're less than, you're not worthy. And can you see how that repetition limits you? Like a subconscious virus. I can't think about creating this gold because God. So you got to clear that, Or worse, I can't create this thing because I have privileges. Clear that up. Because it is, again, something that someone else has told you, a word, a definition that you were not born with. And that definition will inevitably, like everything in history, change within 10, 20, or whatever year. So don't lock yourself into these things. Fully achieve the potential that you can. Have fun. Do those repetition, those positive repetition. Do the inner work. Take that time. If you are able, okay, and here's one heck of a golden bazooka gun, okay? If you are able to get your conscious mind to understand and perceive how fast you create in the mind, okay, and how many options and growth you get in that moment. So perceiving that, let's say, vacation situation, okay, and perceiving how you're going to grow from exploring all those things, okay, and perceiving that you were able to do that in 30 seconds, okay, versus actually doing the trip and then being able to have another level of perception and elements, okay, but the actual trip taking a day or two to then see those other layers. Can you kind of see how much growth you're getting simply by doing this in the mind? And it's not to say don't do it physically. It's just to consciously understand. In 30 seconds, let's say it's not a vacation. Let's say it's something that you kind of want to help and fix at work, okay? In 30 seconds, you were able to lay out and experience and experiment multiple options in different scenarios, okay? 30 seconds versus going in the office in the next morning and then 30 minutes later having those new options. Okay, if you're able to get your mind to consciously get that, then it'll rarely or up to little, it'll stop bothering you during meditation or inner work. It'll stop bothering you because it'll consciously understand that in 30 seconds you've just got more XP dump. You've been able to, let's say, New Game Plus also. That's another practice, inner child work. New Game Plus, that shit, you know? But you were able to get so much understanding, reasoning, reconnection with oneself in that short amount of time versus the long road. You'll also be able to coerce your conscious mind, which has been influenced and indoctrinated by the exterior, to look at everything around, to compare. You'll also be able to coerce it to do that inner work and to see how effective it is, because you'll pay more attention to every incremental awareness that you placed in that moment, because that 30 seconds gives you so much XP compared to letting it flow and then eventually getting into a midlife crisis. So that was maybe a surface level for neurolinguistic programming, kind of like self-help in a sense, hypnosis, metaphysics with the quantum physics, and the brainwashing aspect. You can do it to yourself. It doesn't need to be an exterior thing only, okay? And feel free, I guess another one extra bazooka to give you. Bazooka golden bullet. Feel free to look both in the metaphysical and spiritual aspect and also the scientific one. Do not stick to the one and done source technique. This is the easiest way to fall through a hole. You've seen how it worked with the religious aspect. I am sticking to this one religion. That is it. I feel like shit if I can't accomplish everything that it says. Again, leading to a midlife crisis. Never stick to the one and done. Always see it all as a complementary, because going back to the religious aspect, God created all, so you got to look at the all. Don't reject anything, because that would be rejecting a part of God. Logically, you can understand that, right? But at times, you'll see sometimes repetition keeps you anchored in one way. So that's another inner turmoil to deal with. But always look at the multiplicity of it all. You will eventually find a certain kind of resonance, a certain kind of feeling to something that you prefer, an approach that you prefer, a kind of way of expressing that you prefer. You'll be able to kind of connect the dot. And at that point, feel free to go into it, but also understand that there's other material out there, and you'll eventually get to a point where you'll just bring it out on your own because you understand how that mechanic works. And also, I forgot to add this in. With both the aspect of doing inner work and then the creation work, something that kind of happens is you are able to receive knowledge with much more ease. You'll start noticing it in the creation work, but you'll also notice a third path that kind of opens up, a third option that kind of opens up. It's not saying one has to be done over the other. You'll see it all interconnects and intermerges. You'll see, just practice. But that third option is literally kind of having this connection with your guides, with your own self, And yeah, sure, back in the 80s and 90s, some people said it was woo-woo, but we're not realizing that there's actual physical, actual scientific evidence to it, and there's benefits to it. So your ultimate trick is to get out of the skepticism, give it all a shot, do it with a grain of salt. Even this, take it with a grain of salt. Yet, as you do the exercise, cautiously, no multitasking, please. That was the biggest lie you were ever fed, because you never get to understand and radically feel what 100% of your attention on a specific activity brings. Again, how do you become a genius? More and more understanding as well as enjoyment on the granularity of an activity. But you will never get to that point if you keep multitasking or having something that will take your attention away. Music doesn't necessarily count unless it has lyrics, but if you're watching a video on the side, if you're trying to do too many things at the same time, you'll never get to that point. You never will. So, again, you will take that time in due time and play with this. Don't be harsh on yourself. Stop trying to compare yourself. Just have fun. Playfully have that fun. And use those golden questions of just, hey, golden bullet question. How would it be more fun for me to learn that? How would it be more fun for me to integrate this? Literally, ask yourself out loud. Write it down. If you don't want to be shy around, if you still care about other people's perception around that, which you won't, it'll give you a couple of times, and eventually you'll just be like, oh yeah, that's your perception, whatever. You're not doing the exercise. So write it out. Ask yourself and just see what comes true. Don't underestimate your imagination. That the Western terminology, throw away. The Eastern terminology, transcendence, ascension, evolution. So don't throw it away. Yes, your imagination may be affected by that media brainwashing, as I told about the cocoa, and that can fuck with you royally. I didn't go into the neurons aspect because I spoke about it prior, but look at the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, look at the work of Tony Robbins, look at the work of Amy Cuddy. If you want the scientific and Western aspect of it, look at the work of Louise Hay as well, especially in the aspect of how emotions lodge in the body. Okay? Look at that. And then ask yourself, do I still want to get programmed by someone else, by some exterior factor, or do I actually want to take the control? All of this is just to get your conscious mind to reason with this, because we've been sent on the complete opposite. And now we're just like, fuck this. You've got the controller, so go at this. You've got this. All right? Feel free to ask questions. If you want more material, I could drop some more names to your personal comments. And if you've had certain blockages, leave a comment. We're all here to share insights and technique. This is our natural co-op, because whatever you live from your unique and granular context may connect with someone else that had something similar. Not exactly the same, it's an impossibility, but a similarity. So we're all co-oping together, all right? There is no one truth. No, There's multiple shades and perspectives. So we're all here to navigate through that. Yet the one rule is we ain't stepping over each other, and we ain't gonna force shit over each other. Because we wouldn't want the same onto us. We're just, hey, this is happening for you? Okay, how do we get around that? Here's multiple techniques, multiple golden bullets, multiple things that you can use. Let's go. So, kick some ass and take the time. Take the time. Don't blame yourself though. If you notice the mind continuously going for the mobile in games, just acknowledge it, perceive it, and just kind of go, okay, what am I getting off that? What am I getting from that? You just keep asking yourself those questions. What am I learning from this? Am I learning, again, a very linear context that I'm not necessarily going to live? What am I learning from this? How am I growing from this? Asking that question, doing daily revision and asking that question for some of your activities throughout the days or encounters, it's your golden key, because again, law of repetition. You're constantly going to perceive more and more throughout your days, which gets you more hands on the controller, which gets you more and more happiness throughout your days, because you're not falling for the same mental pitfalls that have been laid out for us. You didn't choose those thoughts. You didn't choose those momentum. So pick up the controller and change it. You're not bound by it. You never were. We were just taught that we were. So go for it. Kick some ass. Have that fun. And don't let yourself get programmed by the exterior. Fuck that shit. But don't resent. Understand, very subtle programming. Some don't know, and like I told you, don't call anyone sheep or a drone, because the subconscious is very, very subtle. And when you understand all those distractions, you also understand why a lot of people haven't really gotten into that, or surrounding people in society, or anybody that still watches the news. You can understand why they haven't really paid attention to their subtle body reaction. And you can also understand why, since we weren't taught that in school, the momentum continues and we pay even less attention to our physical and bodily reaction, nor did we have the science back then. So no blame, always gain. Just growth, no jadedness. I don't necessarily know how to make this rhyme. Whatever. Just go for it, all right? Kick some asses, guys. We're all in this together.